So what we do is we generate a test plan, and then Alta tells us, okay, your low stress level should be 0.33 GRMS, your medium stress level should be 0.5, and your high should be 0.75. Accordingly, you should test about 7 samples, about 3 samples, and about 2 samples at those different stress levels. So based on some information that we gave it, based on a test plan scheme that we chose, it's telling us what stress levels we should test at and how many samples we should test at each stress level to minimize the uncertainty in our desired estimate. So we went ahead and gave that information to our test group, who ran an accelerated test for us. So we have our 2 samples in this column that indicates the stress. We have our 2 samples at 0.75 GRMS. We have 3 samples at 0.5 and 7 samples at 0.33. And you can see that we saw more failures at 0.75, 1 failure at 0.5, and no failures actually at 0.33. And we actually stopped the test at 300 hours, and we'll see why in a little bit. So all that we have to do is, once we've input our data, pick the appropriate model, in this case an inverse power law Weibull model, and then we can start to look at all of our different results. So we can look at, for example, our life-stress relationship plot, and let me just reset that. And this is sort of those sideways PDFs for our different stress levels, as well as that life characteristic, and I have this nice interactive plot where I can drag along and see what my Weibull scale parameter is going to be at different stress levels. I can look at my reliability versus time plot, since that was actually of interest to me, and I've actually defined my target reliability to show up on this plot. And I can see that that's well below my 50th percentile estimate. However, I can even throw confidence bounds on this plot. I can throw a one-sided lower 90% confidence bound on this plot and change the scaling so that I can see whether I'm actually meeting my reliability target. And I can see that, yes, I am. I have, in 300 hours, instead of 700 hours, met my reliability target, my R95C90 reliability target. And all of these plots are nicely interactive and can be copy and pasted and put into PowerPoint or Word or an email or whatever you may want to. And on top of that, to further quantify that, we can go into QCP, which is our quick calculation pad that lets us calculate results, all of those reliability metrics that are of interest to us, based on our input. So I can say that my stress is 0.1 GRMS. At 500 hours, I want my one-sided lower confidence bound on reliability, and I can see that that is 96.6%. So I've demonstrated 96.6% reliability at a 90% lower confidence level in only 300 hours for the time of 500 hours. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff to help us as analysts answer these questions and understand that we've met the spec. We can, of course, copy-paste those plots. We also have a tool to make a report here. So if I double-click this, I get a report window that comes up here. And this is basically a spreadsheet style, kind of Excel style report where I can say, I can point to my actual data source or my actual analysis that I've done. So here, for example, I'm reporting the median life based on my default data source as well as some cells in this spreadsheet. And what this means is that this is a nice, reproducible, portable report, right? So I can do the analysis multiple times and generate results that are of interest to me in exactly the same way. And this is kind of a canned one that comes with the install, but you can configure your own. And I've actually configured my own sort of Word document style report here as well, where I've said I want a table that shows me my reliability bounds from 100 hours to 500 hours at 90% confidence level. I want to see my model parameter bounds, as well as a couple standard plots for life versus stress, residual plot, and my uncertainty with stress. And all that I have to do for any of these reports is tell it which data source I want it to pull from. So in this case, that 421 plan 300-hour test, tell it what use stress I want to calculate these results based on. And then I can actually just see a quick preview of this. And I've got those tables generated based on this result. I've got those plots and I could send this to Word or send this to a PDF. So this is a really nice feature to take that analysis and report results of interest in a reproducible and easily palatable way. Okay, so just to summarize, ALTA helped us intelligently plan our accelerated test, helped us choose what stress levels to test at and how many samples and how long to test for, and it let us calculate metrics of interest based on those test results. And so the result of that is that our demonstration test that we were doing before that used to take 700 hours to show R95C90 now only takes 300 hours. So we met our reliability specification in less than half the time thanks to using ALTA, thanks to using accelerated life testing methodology. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Daniel. As a reminder, please use the Q&A panel to ask your questions, and they will be answered in turn.
Okay, we've got one here. I have to make the window a little bit larger. Okay, so here's one that says, question on CALT. While running the CALT, how do we approach it if there's a failure observed that has no relation with the stress being accelerated? For example, we see a random failure when we are accelerating temperature, and the failure has no temperature relation. That's a very good question. So in the event that you see a failure that is not of interest to you for that analysis, you can consider it a suspension. So let's say that you've got, in the example that I gave, a corrosion and a fatigue type failure mode. If while you're analyzing the fatigue type failure mode, you see a corrosion failure, you can consider that a suspension for the reason that it did not fail due to fatigue, right? And you essentially took it out of the fatigue test at that time. So you can consider it a suspension. That applies not just to ALTA methodology, but also to regular old life data analysis. Another question here is, can ALTA select the best power law to apply? So I think that you're talking about the life stress relationship, and yes, we have a tool that compares the statistical fit for different life stress relationships. However, something to note there is that we've got usually 2 or 3 stress levels that we're fitting to. So if you've got 2 or 3 points, the statistical fit is not going to be a super robust way to consider which one is the best. So it should generally be based on the physics of failure. The general rule of thumb that we gave earlier with Arrhenius for thermally accelerated failures and inverse power law for non-thermally accelerated failures is just that, very general. But you can do a literature search for your failure mode of interest. I gave the example of electromigration and come up with the appropriate life stress relationship. In the absence of that, we have that rule of thumb and those measures of statistical fit. We had another question that said, how many failures are desired at each stress level? That's the thing is, with test design, we don't actually want, we don't strictly say we want this number of failures at each stress level. There's lots of rules of thumb that you can find that say you should have no failures or 1 failure at the low stress level and all failures at the high stress level or something like that. But really, the test design tool kind of makes that pretty nice or nice to handle, because you can say, I don't have to think explicitly about the number of failures at each stress level, but I can rather think about the results that I'm trying to get and then pick my stress levels and the expectation of failure accordingly. What are some limitations to the CALT analysis approach? So I had a slide on that earlier. You need to know some stuff about the physics of failure. You have to analyze 1 failure mode at a time, right? There's a little bit of prior knowledge that has to go into that. So if you're used to perhaps highly accelerated life testing, that typically has less information going in and gets sort of qualitative results. And some of those qualitative results can be used to effectively do a CALT test, right? So one of the limitations I would say is that you need to have some information to do it or to get good results out of it. We have another question: is a part treated as a suspension for a type of failure mode when it experienced a different failure mode? Yes, someone asked that earlier. Yes, you can consider it as a suspension.